Numbers don't lie, and blood doesn't wash out of tile grout. Quinn Ashwell had learned both things the hard way, and she was learning the second one again right now, crouched on the cold concrete floor of a service stairwell on the 14th floor of the Harrington Grand Hotel, watching a thin dark line creep toward the drain beneath the mop sink. It wasn't her blood. That was the only thing keeping her breathing. The dinner had been routine. Quarterly review, 3 clients, a corner table in the hotel's private dining room. Quinn had been there to take notes and look competent, which was the entirety of her job description as far as most people in Carews' organization understood it. She reconciled accounts. She flagged inconsistencies. She sat in the corner with a glass of sparkling water and pretended she didn't understand the conversations happening around her. What she hadn't planned on was finding the second set of books. She'd excused herself to the restroom at 9:47. On the way back, she'd taken a wrong turn. The hotel's carpeted corridors all looked identical after 2 glasses of wine she hadn't actually drunk, and pushed open a door that shouldn't have been unlocked. The office inside was small, clearly borrowed for the evening. A laptop open, a printed spreadsheet left on the chair as though someone had stepped away for 30 seconds and expected to return. Quinn had looked at it for exactly 4 seconds before she understood what she was seeing. The numbers weren't for Carew. They never had been. She'd taken a photo with her phone and walked out quietly. She'd made it to the stairwell before she heard the voices in the corridor, low, deliberate hunting, and understood that the door she'd pushed open had been watched. That was 11 minutes ago. The stairwell door above her rattled. Quinn pressed herself flat against the wall behind the mop sink, her phone gripped so tightly in her hand that her knuckles ached. She could hear 2 sets of footsteps on the landing above, moving slowly, checking each floor. They'd reach her in 4 minutes, maybe 3. Her contacts list was open on her screen. She had a sister in Halifax who hadn't spoken to her in 2 years. She had a landlord whose name she'd saved only as apartment, do not miss. She had the number for a 24-hour pharmacy on Bloor that had once talked her through a panic attack at 2 a.m. And she had Carew. No first name in her contacts, just the one word, sitting between her dentist and a takeout place that had closed 8 months ago. She had never called it. In 3 years of working for him, she had never once called that number after hours, because the rule was that you didn't. The rule was that you were professional and capable, and did not drag personal emergencies into the operational structure of an organization built on the principle that weakness had a cost. The footsteps descended another floor. Quinn pressed the call button. In the basement of a building on Wellington Street that officially didn't exist, Carew was having a conversation that required his full attention. The man across from him, a logistics coordinator named Breslin, who had been skimming product for 11 months, had finally run out of lies. Carew could tell by the way his hands had gone still. People stopped moving when they decided to confess. Some evolutionary response to approaching inevitability, he supposed. He found it useful. His phone vibrated against his thigh. He ignored it. His second, a compact and reliably efficient man named Webb, was leaning against the far wall with his arms crossed. Breslin had nowhere to go and no more lies to offer. The phone vibrated again, sustained, stubborn. Only 4 people had this number. 3 of them were currently in the room. Carew reached into his jacket pocket. The screen read, Quinn. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. The cold shift of something going wrong before you could see it. He stood up. Webb looked at him. Carew pressed the call to his ear. Speak. There was no sound for a moment. Then, so quiet he almost missed it, a breath, the kind of breath someone takes when they've been holding it for too long. Carew. Her voice was barely a whisper. It had no edges left. He had heard Quinn Ashwell speak in boardrooms, in parking lots at midnight, once in the middle of a power outage when she had calmly read account numbers from memory by the light of her phone screen. Her voice was always even, precise. It held the dry authority of someone who had never once doubted their arithmetic. This voice belonged to someone standing on the edge of something she couldn't calculate. "Where are you?" It wasn't a question. 14th floor stairwell, Harrington Grand. A pause. Her breath stuttered. "I found something. In one of the side offices. I wasn't supposed to see it. I think they know I did." A small sound suppressed immediately. "There are 2 of them on the stairs above me, working their way down." Carew was already walking. "Whose men?" "I don't know. The name on the spreadsheet was Halverson." She kept her voice flat and low with visible effort. He could hear the discipline it cost her. "He's been running parallel accounts through the Rideau shell companies, the ones you think are clean. He's been diverting. Carew, he's been diverting for 18 months. The dinner tonight wasn't a client review. It was a handoff." "Yes." He pushed through the basement door and took the stairs up 2 at a time without raising his voice. "Get behind something solid. Not a stall door. Find a utility room. Anything with a bolt. The mop sink room, I'm already in it. The door doesn't lock from the inside. Hold it shut, both hands on the handle, your body weight against the lower panel." A soft scrape of sound. She was already moving. Carew, her voice dropped even lower. Not from fear, he realized, from something closer to shame. "I'm sorry to call. I know what this costs. I know what you're in the middle of." He was already out the side door of the building, the rain hitting him flat across the face. "Don't apologize to me. I didn't know who else." Quinn, her name short and hard, cut the spiral off. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Then stop apologizing and keep that door closed." He reached the car, yanked it open. "I'm 12 minutes out. You have my word." She didn't answer for a moment. Then very quietly, "Okay." It was the smallest word she had ever said to him in 3 years. It landed somewhere in his chest like a stone, dropped into standing water. He threw the car into drive. 12 minutes was optimistic. He made it in 9. He drove the way he did everything, with absolute economy of motion and no particular regard for traffic signals. The Harrington Grand was a tower of glass and restraint in the financial district, the kind of hotel that hosted cabinet ministers and transactions that never appeared in any public record. The lobby would be watched. He went through the loading dock instead. He found a hotel employee in the service corridor and showed him the kind of face that ended arguments before they started. The door to the mop sink room was at the end of a concrete-floored hallway lit by a single fluorescent tube that flickered with nervous energy. The door was moving, tiny, rhythmic shifts in the frame, someone on the other side holding it shut through will alone. One of Halverson's men was crouched in front of it, working a tool into the gap near the handle. The second one heard Carew coming and turned around. That was a mistake. Carew dealt with both men efficiently and without ceremony. He straightened his cuffs. He looked at the door. "Quinn." A pause, the sound of weight shifting away from the door. Then it opened. She was pressed against the back wall beside the utility shelf, still holding her phone, her grey blazer streaked with dust along one shoulder. Her hair had come halfway loose from where she'd pinned it. She looked at the 2 men on the floor, then at him. "You drove here yourself," she said. "Yes." "You didn't bring anyone." "There wasn't time." Quinn Ashwell looked at Carew, the way she looked at a column of numbers that didn't add up, with focused, slightly frustrated attention that would not rest until it understood the mechanism. Then she pushed off the wall and walked past him into the hallway. "Halverson will know they didn't come back," she said. Her voice had returned to its usual register, controlled, slightly too precise the way it always was when she was managing something she found alarming. "We have maybe 20 minutes before he knows something went wrong." She was already looking at the photo on her phone. "We need to go." He watched her. She didn't ask what had happened to the men on the floor. She didn't ask whether she should be worried about any of it. She had taken stock of the situation and moved immediately to the next problem. He had hired her because she was good with numbers. He had kept her because she was this. "Come on," he said. She did not go home that night. He didn't offer to take her, and she didn't ask, which told him she'd already done the calculation. Halverson knew her face. He knew she'd seen the documents. Her apartment was filed under her legal name in a lease that anyone with the right database access could pull in under 3 minutes. Carews' building was a converted loft in the distillery district that appeared in no record connected to his name. He had lived there for 4 years and hosted exactly 3 other people inside it, none of them voluntarily. Quinn walked in, looked at the exposed brick and the floor-to-ceiling windows and the kitchen island the size of a small car, and said, "Your espresso machine isn't plugged in. I don't make espresso. You have a machine. It came with the unit." She found the cord behind the counter without being asked, plugged it in, and began opening cupboards with the efficient curiosity of someone taking inventory. He watched her find the coffee on the 4th try. "Halverson's funding Creighton," Carew said. He sat on the edge of the island, arms crossed, watching her work through the machine's buttons with the same focused patience she applied to everything. "Creighton runs the Port Authority Committee. He's been blocking our container licenses for 8 months. I assumed it was a pricing disagreement." It wasn't a disagreement. It was a siege. Quinn set 2 small cups under the machine's nozzle without asking if he wanted any. He needed the licenses bottlenecked to drive up the cost of your import operations. "Halverson's been skimming from your accounts to pay for the committee votes. The longer the bottleneck runs, the more pressure on your cash flow, the more you have to renegotiate at a disadvantage." She pressed the start button. The machine hummed. It's a slow bleed. In 8 months, none of his men had traced it back to Halverson. They'd been looking at Creighton, looking at the committee, looking at rivals across the province, looking outward. Quinn had taken 4 seconds at a spreadsheet she wasn't supposed to see and followed the money home. "How long have you known Halverson was involved?" he asked. "About 9 minutes longer than you have. Before tonight, did you suspect him?" She was quiet for a moment. The machine finished its first pull. She slid the cup toward him without looking up. "I flagged an anomaly in the Rideau accounts 6 weeks ago," she said. "The variance was small enough that I wasn't certain. I put it in the weekly reconciliation report." "I read that report." "You initialed it and moved on." She wasn't accusing him. She was simply accurate. "I didn't push because I didn't have enough to push with. I needed to see the source document." She looked at him then, and there was something in her expression he hadn't seen before. Not fear exactly, something older than fear. "I always follow the numbers, Carew. That's the one thing I know how to do." He picked up the espresso cup. It was good. He didn't say so. "You should have come to me with the anomaly." "Yes," she said simply, "I should have." He set the cup down. Outside, the city ran wet with rain. The lights on the lake blurred into long watercolor strokes. He had spent 20 years building something in this city. Not an empire exactly, more the skeleton of one, an operation designed to outlast its architect. He dealt in patience and in ledgers of his own kind. What was owed, what was earned, who had paid and who had not. He had never calculated Quinn Ashwell as anything other than an asset. He was beginning to suspect he'd been doing the arithmetic wrong. "Your apartment," he said. "I've already thought about it." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. Her knuckles, he noticed, had stopped shaking. She'd been shaking in the stairwell. Barely visible, but there the fine tremor of someone running on adrenaline and will. Now she was still. "I'm not going back tonight." "You'll stay here." She nodded once, the way she nodded when she'd reviewed a document and found it accurate. "In the morning," she said, "I want to trace the Thunder Bay account. My people will handle Creighton." "Your people didn't find Halverson." She said it without heat, without apology, just the fact of it, clean and direct. "I can pull the full account history, cross-reference the committee vote schedule against the deposit timing, and give you a complete picture of who else is on the payroll before noon tomorrow." A pause. "If you'll give me access to the servers." Carew looked at her for a long moment. "You've never asked me for access to the servers." "I've never needed it before. She met his eyes. She did that, held his gaze longer than most people were comfortable doing, not challenging him, just refusing to look away. I need it now. He walked to the desk at the far end of the room, unlocked the secondary laptop, typed in the access code, and set it in front of her. Quinn sat down. She worked for 3 hours without stopping. He brought her water at some point, and she drank it without taking her eyes off the screen. Webb called twice. Carew stepped away and came back both times to find her deeper into the structure, building a map of Creighton's operation more comprehensive than anything his own people had assembled in 8 months. At 2:14 a.m. she sat back. Creighton has 7 committee members on rotation. I have payment records for 5 of them. The other 2 are using intermediaries, but the timing patterns are identical, traceable within a few hours. She rubbed her eyes with the back of her hand. And Halverson has a meeting scheduled at the Port Authority offices Thursday morning. He won't cancel it. Canceling would signal that something is wrong. So we let him walk into it. You let him walk into it, she corrected. I'll be watching the accounts. If he tries to move funds before Thursday, I'll see it within seconds. Carew leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, watching her in the blue light of the screen. She looked tired. She looked like someone who had been doing a very specific kind of work for a very long time and had never once been thanked for it or asked how she was holding up under the weight of knowing what she knew. You're good at this, he said. She glanced at him. At accounting? At all of it. Quinn Ashwell looked at him the way she had in the stairwell, recalibrating, taking stock, running the numbers on something that didn't appear in any column she'd been given. I've been good at it for 3 years, she said quietly. You're only noticing now because I got stuck in a utility closet. He didn't have an answer for that. Because she was right, and he knew it, and the particular ledger he'd been keeping on Quinn Ashwell had a very large entry he'd been leaving unrecorded for a very long time. Get some sleep, he said. There's a room at the end of the hall. She nodded and closed the laptop. She stood, and she was almost to the hallway when she stopped. Carew. He looked at her. Thank you. She said it the way she said everything, directly, without performance. For coming. You called, he said. I came. It was the simplest accounting he had ever done. Thursday arrived cold and bright, the sky over the lake the particular scrubbed blue that follows hard rain. Quinn sat in Carew's car in the parking garage below the Port Authority building with a laptop balanced on her knees and an earpiece in her left ear. Webb was upstairs. 3 of Carew's people were positioned at the building's exits. Carew himself was in the lobby. Halverson walked in at 8:52 a.m. He walked out in custody at 9:07. The committee members followed, one by one, over the course of the next 2 hours. Each of them traced through documentation that Quinn had spent 48 hours assembling into something a Crown attorney could read without a glossary. By noon, the Thunder Bay account was frozen. By 1:30, a financial regulatory complaint had been filed, carefully, under a protocol that Carew had not known she understood and had not asked her to use, and the committee's most recent round of votes was flagged for independent review. She was eating a sandwich at the kitchen island when Carew walked in. He was still in the suit he'd worn to the lobby. There was a small cut along his jaw. Halverson, she gathered, had not gone quietly. The license applications, he asked. Resubmitted this morning. The new committee chair is an old contact of yours. He'll expedite. How did you know that? She gestured at the laptop. Public records. His campaign donation history. He owes you 4 favors going back to 2019. Carew sat down across from her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The afternoon light came in low and yellow across the island, catching the grain of the concrete countertop. Outside, the city was doing what it always did, absorbing the night's violence and moving on, seamless and indifferent, the way all cities do. You should have a different title, he said at last. Quinn looked at him. Chief Financial Officer is accurate, he said, if you want it. She was quiet for a moment. She was thinking about the stairwell, the cold floor under her knees and the sound of footsteps working downward, and the moment she had opened her contacts list and stared at his name. She was thinking about what it had cost her to press that call button. 3 years of careful, invisible professionalism. The armor she'd built, column by column, audit by audit. And she was thinking about the way he'd set a laptop in front of her at 2 a.m. without making her justify a single keystroke. "Yes," Quinn Ashwell said, "I want it." Carew reached across the island and moved the laptop, so there was nothing between them. And he looked at her the way she'd been looking at him for 3 years, like someone finally checking the bottom line. The woman who had spent her whole career being invisible picked up her sandwich, and the organization that had been bleeding quietly in the dark began at last to balance its books.